November 27th, 1950, North Korea. If you spit, it freezes before it hits the ground. If you cry, your eyelashes freeze together, sealing your eyes shut. If you touch bare metal with your bare hand, you lose your skin. It rips off like wet paper. This is the Chosin Reservoir, a frozen wasteland near the border of China, surrounded by jagged mountains that look like broken teeth. The temperature is 30 degrees below zero. At night, with the wind chill, it drops to -40. At that temperature, diesel fuel turns into jelly, gun oil turns into glue, and human flesh turns into stone. My name is James O'Connor. My friends call me Jimmy. I am 19 years old. I am a private first class in the 1st Marine Division. 6 months ago, I was surfing on Daytona Beach in Florida. The sun was so hot it burned my shoulders. I complained about the heat. God, I would give anything to complain about the heat right now. I would give my left arm just to feel the sun on my face for 5 seconds. But there is no sun here. There is only the wind. A screaming white wind that cuts through 4 layers of clothing like a razor blade. Let's go back. Just a few weeks. General MacArthur promised us we would be home by Christmas. That was the lie. The big, beautiful lie. We marched north with our heads held high. We thought the war was over. We thought the North Koreans were beaten. We didn't know that we were walking into a trap. We didn't know that Chairman Mao had secretly sent 120,000 Chinese soldiers across the border. They were ghost soldiers. They moved at night. They wore white uniforms to blend in with the snow. And they were waiting for us in the mountains, waiting for us to walk into the bowl of the reservoir so they could close the lid. We are currently dug in at a place called Udam. Dug in is the wrong word. You can't dig here. The ground is frozen solid. It's harder than concrete. I broke my entrenching tool trying to chip out a foxhole. The metal shovel just snapped in half. So we sit on top of the ground, exposed. We stack rocks. We stack logs. And soon we will stack other things. I share my position with Sergeant Miller. He's an old breed Marine. He fought in the Pacific in World War II. He killed Japanese soldiers on beaches that were boiling hot. Now he's freezing to death in a hole in Korea. Sarge keeps telling me to change my socks. "Change 'em, Jimmy," he growls, his voice raspy from the cold air. "Put the wet ones under your armpits to dry 'em out. If you don't, your toes will turn black and fall off." He's right. Frostbite is the silent killer. I saw a kid from Baker Company take his boots off yesterday. His toes were blue. He tried to wiggle them, but they didn't move. He didn't scream. He just stared at them, like they belonged to someone else. The corpsman cut them off with a pair of shears. No anesthesia. The morphine syrettes were frozen solid anyway. The kid didn't feel a thing. The cold had already killed the nerves. The nights are the worst. The silence is heavy. It presses down on you. You sit there, shivering so hard your teeth rattle, staring into the black void. You imagine shapes in the snow. Is that a bush? Or is it a Chinese soldier crawling towards you? Is that the wind howling? Or is it a bugle? The Chinese army uses bugles and whistles to communicate. It's psychological warfare. Before they attack, you hear it. A low, haunting sound echoing off the canyon walls. It sounds like the trumpet of Judgment Day. Tonight it is quiet. Too quiet. I try to eat my dinner. A tin of beans. But the beans are a solid block of ice. I have to put the tin inside my shirt, against my skin, to thaw it out with my body heat. It takes an hour just to get a spoonful of mush. While I wait, I think about home. I think about my mom's kitchen, the smell of frying bacon, the steam rising from a coffee pot. I take out a photo of my girlfriend, Betty. I keep it in my helmet liner. She is wearing a polka dot dress. She is smiling. I look at her smile, and I try to remember what happiness feels like. But the cold is stealing my memories. It slows down your brain. It makes you sleepy. Just close your eyes for a minute, the cold whispers. Just rest. It's warm in the snow. That's how they find you in the morning. Frozen in the fetal position, covered in a light dusting of snow, looking like a marble statue. Wake up, O'Connor! Sarge kicks my boot. I jolt awake. I panic. I grab my M1 Garand rifle. What? What is it? Listen, Sarge whispers. I hold my breath. I pull down my wool scarf. I listen to the wind, and then I hear it. Thousands of feet crunching on snow. It sounds like a river of people. Then the sound of a whistle. Sharp, piercing, tweet, tweet, tweet. Then another, and another. Suddenly, the mountainside lights up. Not with sunlight, but with muzzle flashes. Green tracers arc through the sky. Mortar rounds start falling. Thump, thump, thump. The snow around us erupts into geysers of ice and dirt. Here they come, Sarge screams. Lock and load! I pull the charging handle on my rifle. It moves slowly, sluggishly. The oil is thickening. I aim at the shadows rushing towards us. There are so many of them. It looks like the snow itself has stood up and started running. A human wave. They are screaming. They are blowing bugles. They are running straight into our machine gun fire, and they aren't stopping. This isn't a battle. This is an avalanche. And we are standing at the bottom of the mountain. I fire my first shot. The recoil hits my shoulder. The brass casing flies out and sizzles in the snow. The heat of the barrel feels good. For the first time in weeks, I am warm. But it is the warmth of hell. Welcome to Chosin. The first wave lasted for 3 hours. It wasn't a battle of strategy. It was a battle of physics. Mass against metal. The Chinese soldiers didn't use cover. They didn't flank us. They just ran straight into the teeth of our defense. They wore quilted cotton uniforms that looked puffy and white. When the bullets hit them, puffs of cotton flew into the air like feathers from a torn pillow. They kept coming. They climbed over their own, dead to get to us. I was firing as fast as I could. Bang, 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 ping. The empty clip ejected from my M1 Garand with a metallic ring. I reached for a fresh clip. My fingers were stiff, like claws. I fumbled. The clip fell into the snow. Damn it! I screamed. I grabbed another one. I shoved it in. I smashed the bolt forward. Click. Nothing happened. No bang. Just a dull, sickening click. The firing pin was frozen. The oil inside the receiver had turned into a gummy paste in the minus 30-degree air. A Chinese soldier was 20 yards away. He had a potato masher grenade in his hand. He was pulling the cord. Sarge, I'm jammed, I yelled. My rifle is jammed. Sarge didn't look at me. He was firing his Thompson submachine gun in short, controlled bursts. Pee on it, he roared. What? You heard me. Urinate on the receiver. Melt the ice. Do it now, or you're dead. It was insane. It was humiliating, but I didn't have a choice. I stood up, exposed to the enemy fire, and did what I had to do. The warm liquid hit the metal. Steam rose up in the freezing air. The ice melted instantly. I dropped back down, racked the bolt, and aimed. Bang! The soldier with the grenade dropped. The grenade exploded harmlessly in the snow a few feet from his body. That is the reality of Chosin. There is no dignity here. There is only survival. By 400 hours, the shooting stopped. The Chinese pulled back into the darkness. They always did that. They attacked at night and vanished before dawn. But they left their calling card. Hundreds of bodies lay in the snow in front of our position. Some of them were still moaning. Most were silent. The temperature dropped even lower. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee. I sat in the snow, shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the cold was rushing back in to take its place. My sweat was freezing inside my underwear. It felt like I was wearing a suit of broken glass. "Check your ammo," Sarge said. He lit a cigarette. The flame of his lighter was the only color in a world of black and white. "We're low," I said. "I have 2 clips left." "We need to conserve," Sarge said. "They'll be back tonight, and there will be more of them." He looked around at our position. We were exposed. The rock wall we had built was shattered by mortar fire. We had no cover. "We need to dig in," I said. "We need foxholes." Sarge laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. He took his bayonet and stabbed the ground. Clang! It sounded like he hit a steel plate. The blade bounced off. The ground was permafrost. Frozen solid for 3 feet down. You couldn't dig a hole with a shovel. You needed dynamite, and we didn't have any. Sarge looked out at the field of dead bodies in front of us. He took a long drag of his cigarette. Then he looked at me. "Jimmy," he said, "get up." "Where are we going, Sarge?" "We need sandbags," he said. "But we don't have any sand. And we don't have any bags." He pointed at the dead Chinese soldiers. "Grab his legs," Sarge commanded. I stared at him. "Sarge, you can't be serious." "Do you want to die tonight, O'Connor?" His voice was hard as flint. "Because if we don't build a wall, that wind is going to freeze us. And if the wind doesn't get us, the bullets will. Now grab his legs." I walked over to the nearest body. He was young, maybe my age. His eyes were open, staring at the sky. A layer of frost had already formed on his eyelashes. I grabbed his ankles. They were stiff. Rigor mortis and the cold had turned him into a statue. Sarge grabbed his wrists. "Heave!" Sarge grunted. We lifted him. He was heavy, dead weight. We carried him back to our perimeter and dropped him. Thud. It didn't sound like flesh hitting the ground. It sounded like a log. "Stack him," Sarge said. We went back for another. And another. We worked for an hour. We dragged 20 men across the ice. We stacked them like firewood, 3 bodies high, a semicircle of frozen humanity to protect us from the wind and the bullets. I sat down behind the wall. My back was resting against the chest of a dead man. I could feel the hardness of his frozen uniform through my jacket. I looked at the face of the man on top of the pile. He was facing me. His expression was blank, peaceful almost. I wondered if he had a girlfriend. I wondered if he had a mom waiting for him in Beijing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my chocolate ration. I broke off a piece. I tried to eat it, but my stomach turned. I was hiding behind a wall of meat. I was using human beings as bricks. "Don't look at them," Sarge said softly. He was cleaning his weapon. "It's wrong, Sarge," I whispered. "This is unholy." "It's war, Jimmy," he said. "God left this place a long time ago. It's just us and the devil now." Sarge was right, but as I sat there, sheltered from the biting wind, by the bodies of my enemies, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't cold anymore. The wall was working. The dead were saving the living. The sun came up, a pale, weak orb that gave no heat. The Corsair fighter planes arrived. They dropped napalm on the hillsides. We watched the orange jelly explode. burning the trees, burning the snow. It was beautiful in a sick way. It meant we were still alive. But the planes couldn't land. The airstrip at Hagaruri was still under construction. We couldn't get out. We were surrounded. 1st Marine Division, 30,000 men. Surrounded by 10 divisions of the Chinese 9th Army. We were the bait. And the trap had snapped shut. That afternoon, the order came down the line. "We are moving out." We weren't retreating. Marines don't retreat. "We are just attacking in a different direction," General Smith said. We were going to fight our way to the sea. 78 miles of mountain roads, every mile occupied by the enemy. I looked at our wall of bodies. We had to leave it behind. "Pack your gear, Jimmy," Sarge said. "Check your feet. We have a long walk ahead of us." I stood up. My legs were stiff. I looked at the Chinese soldier I had been sitting against. I brushed the snow off his face. "Thanks," I whispered. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I was thanking him for blocking the wind. Maybe I was thanking him for not killing me yesterday. Or maybe I was just saying goodbye to the last shred of my humanity. We formed a column on the road, trucks carrying the wounded, jeeps pulling artillery, and thousands of men walking alongside them. The frozen Chosin march had begun, and the gauntlet was waiting. The road out of Chosin was not a road. It was a sheet of ice, twisting through the mountains like a frozen snake. We called it Hellfire Valley. 78 miles to the sea. We walked. That was the only rule. You walk or you die. If you stopped to rest, the sweat inside your clothes would freeze instantly. You would fall asleep and never wake up. If you were wounded and put on a truck, you weren't safe. The Chinese snipers targeted the trucks first. They aimed for the drivers. I saw a truck ahead of me swerve off the cliff after the driver took a bullet to the neck. It tumbled down the ravine, turning over and over. Bodies flew out of the back like rag dolls. There was no explosion, just the sound of metal crushing against rock, and then silence. We didn't stop. We couldn't. We just pulled our scarves up tighter and kept putting one boot in front of the other. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Day 3 of the march. My feet were numb. I couldn't feel my toes anymore. I knew what that meant. Frostbite. But I didn't look. If I looked, I would give up. Sarge was walking next to me. He looked like a snowman. His beard was a solid block of ice. His eyes were red slits, scanning the ridgeline. "Keep moving, Jimmy," he rasped. "Don't look at the cliffs. Look at my back. Just follow me." We were sleepwalking through a shooting gallery. Every few hundred yards, a shot would ring out. Crack. A Marine would drop. We would drag him to the side of the road, call for a medic, and keep moving. There was no cover. The road was the only way out. We were ants marching in a line, and the enemy was a kid with a magnifying glass. Then we hit the bottleneck. The Funchilin Pass. It was a narrow path carved into the side of a mountain. On one side, a sheer wall of rock. On the other, a 1,500-foot drop into the abyss. And in the middle of the pass, there was a bridge. Or rather, there used to be a bridge. The Chinese had blown it up. We stood there, staring at the gap. It was only 20 feet across, but it might as well have been 20 miles. Beyond that gap was freedom. Beyond that gap was the sea. But without the bridge, we were trapped. We were sitting ducks. The tanks couldn't cross. The trucks couldn't cross. And thousands of Chinese soldiers were closing in from behind. "That's it," a kid from Delta Company whispered. He dropped his rifle. It's over. Despair rippled through the column. Men sat down in the snow, heads in their hands. But Sarge grabbed me by the collar. "Look up," he said. "What?" "Look up, Jimmy." I looked up. Through the swirling snow, I heard the roar of engines. C-119 flying boxcars, huge cargo planes. The back ramps opened. Parachutes blossomed in the gray sky. Huge G-1 cargo chutes. But they weren't dropping food. They weren't dropping ammo. They were dropping steel. Bridge sections. Giant 2-ton steel girders were floating down from the heavens. I had never seen anything like it. It was impossible. It was a miracle. The Air Force was airdropping a bridge to us. I'll be damned, Sarge smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile in weeks. Those crazy flyboys actually did it. We watched as the engineers went to work. Under enemy mortar fire, in minus 30-degree weather, they assembled the bridge. They tied themselves to the cliff face with ropes so they wouldn't fall into the abyss. Sparks flew as they welded the steel. It took hours, but by nightfall the gap was closed. The first tank rumbled across. The bridge groaned, but it held. A cheer went up, a ragged, frozen cheer from 10,000 throats. "Let's go," Sarge said. "We're going home." We started to cross. The wind in the pass was ferocious. It threatened to blow us right off the edge. I was walking behind Sarge. We were halfway across. I could see the other side. I was thinking about the ocean. I was thinking about a hot shower. Then I heard it. Not a gunshot. It was softer. Thwack. It sounded like a snowball hitting a wall. Sarge stopped mid-step. He didn't scream. He just let out a long, slow sigh. He turned around to face me. There was a small red hole in the center of his chest. "Sarge," I whispered. He looked at me, confused. He tried to speak, but blood bubbled out of his mouth. He fell to his knees. "Sarge!" I dropped my rifle and grabbed him. "No, no, no, not now. We're here. Look, Sarge, we made it." I pointed to the other side of the bridge. It was only 10 yards away. Sarge looked at the end of the bridge. Then he looked at me. His eyes were fading fast. The light was going out. He reached into his pocket with a trembling hand. He pulled out his silver Zippo lighter, the one he used to light his cigarettes in the dark. He pressed it into my hand. "Warm," he whispered. Then he slumped forward into the snow. I shook him. "Sarge, get up. Use the lighter. Get up." But he was gone. The man who taught me how to survive. The man who made me build a wall of dead bodies to stay alive. The man who dragged me through hell. He died 10 yards from freedom. A mortar round exploded near the bridge entrance. "Move it, Marine!" an officer screamed at me. "You're blocking the tank! Move!" I looked at Sarge's body. I wanted to carry him, but I couldn't. I was too weak. If I tried to carry him, I would fall, and we would both go over the edge. I looked at the lighter in my hand. It was still warm from his body heat. I put it in my pocket. I stood up. I didn't look back. I walked the last 10 yards alone. I stepped off the bridge and onto the solid ground of the south side. I was safe. But as I looked back across the ravine, at the winding column of frozen men and burning trucks, I realized the truth. Jimmy O'Connor, the surfer from Florida, fell off that bridge. The thing that walked across was something else. Something cold. Something hard. Something that would never be warm again. I kept walking. Down the mountain. Toward the sea. The Chinese were still shooting. The wind was still screaming. But I didn't feel it anymore. I just gripped the lighter in my pocket. 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other, until the ocean stops the land. December 11th, 1950. The smell hit me first. After weeks of smelling nothing but snow, cordite, and rotting flesh, suddenly the air changed. Salt. It was the smell of the ocean. We stumbled out of the mountains and saw it. Hung Nam Port. The sea was filled with ships, hundreds of them. Destroyers, cruisers, transport ships, their gray steel hulls gleaming in the winter sun. It looked like the entire industrial might of America had come to pick us up. I fell to my knees. I didn't pray. I just cried. Tears ran down my cracked, frozen cheeks, and for the first time in a month, they didn't freeze. We had walked out. We had beaten the cold. We had beaten the Chinese army. We had beaten death itself. The evacuation was chaos, but it was organized chaos. It wasn't just us. It was thousands of North Korean refugees, civilians, men carrying grandmothers on their backs, mothers carrying babies wrapped in rags. They were begging to get on the ships. They knew what would happen when the Chinese arrived. I stood in line to board a Liberty ship. A sailor handed me a cup of hot coffee. I held the cup with both hands, letting the heat seep into my numb palms. I took a sip. It burned my tongue. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. I looked back at the mountains one last time. Somewhere back there, in the snow, under a bridge, Sarge was sleeping. Somewhere back there was the boy I used to be. I turned away and walked up the gangplank. As the ships pulled away, the engineers finished their last job. We couldn't leave anything for the enemy. No food, no ammo, no shelter. They rigged the entire port of Hungnam with explosives. I stood on the deck of the ship and watched. It was the biggest non-nuclear explosion in history. The horizon turned white, then orange, then black. Warehouses, docks, cranes, everything vanished in a mushroom cloud of debris. We were burning the door shut behind us. The shockwave hit the ship a few seconds later, rattling the hull. I reached into my pocket and touched the Zippo lighter. "Warm," I whispered. "It's finally warm." I returned to Florida in 1951. The heat was waiting for me. 90 degrees, humidity you could swim in. My mom hugged me and said I looked thin. She said I looked haunted. I tried to go back to my old life. I tried to surf. I paddled out into the ocean, sitting on my board, waiting for a wave. But the water felt wrong. It felt heavy. Every time I closed my eyes, I didn't see the blue Atlantic. I saw the white snow of Chosin. I saw the wall of bodies. I stopped surfing. I stopped going to the beach. I started sleeping with the windows open in the winter, even when it was freezing. The cold was the only thing that felt real. The heat felt like a lie. I married Betty. We had 3 kids. I worked in a hardware store for 40 years. I lived a good life, a quiet life, but I never told them. I never told them about the night I urinated on my rifle to make it shoot. I never told them about stacking human beings like firewood. I never told them about Sarge dying 10 yards from salvation. Some stories are too heavy to share. If you give them to someone else, you just crush them. So I carried it alone. Me and the Zippo lighter. I am an old man now. My hands shake, not from the cold, but from age. I sit on my porch and watch the sunset. People talk about the Korean War as the forgotten war. They say it wasn't a victory. They say it was a stalemate. They look at the maps and say, we ended up right where we started. But they don't understand. We didn't fight for a map. We didn't fight for territory. We fought for the man standing next to us. We fought to keep each other warm in a world that wanted to freeze us to death. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I flick the lighter open. Clink, the flame dances, yellow and blue. I stare at it, and for a second, I am 19 again. I can hear the wind howling through the Funchilin Pass. I can hear the bugles blowing in the dark, and I can hear Sarge's voice. Keep moving, Jimmy. Don't look back. War leaves a mark on you, not a scar on your skin, but a frostbite on your soul. Parts of you go numb and never wake up. But as long as I hold this flame, as long as I remember them, they are not gone. They are not frozen in the snow. They are here, alive, because I lived to tell their story. My name is James O'Connor. I survived the frozen Chosin, and I promise you, I will never be cold again. This has been a Homecoming Scars production. History is filled with stories that are freezing in the dark, waiting to be found. If this story warmed something in your heart or chilled something in your bones, please subscribe. Help us keep the flame alive. Until next time, stay warm.